This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Pet injuries and additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome. You are entering the Stone Zone, and with breaking news, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, along with Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, and White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles worked together to persuade the president to block a push for an attack on Iran that could have precipitated a new world war. In a reported meeting only days ago concerning Israeli military plans, Tulsi Gabbard, the former Democrat congresswoman turned Republican from Hawaii, now the Director of National Intelligence, presented a new intelligence assessment that said that the buildup of American weaponry could potentially spark a wider conflict with Iran that the United States did not want. A range of officials echoed Tulsi Gabbard's concerns in the various meetings, including the first woman White House Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, as well as Vice President J.D. Vance, all voiced their own doubts about the attack, according to my sources. In the aftermath of this meeting, President Donald Trump blocked a planned Israeli strike on Iranian nuclear sites in favor of negotiating a deal with Iran to limit its nuclear program. Actually, the New York Times confirmed this, citing administration officials and others. Israel had developed plans to attack the sites as far back as May, with the goal to set back Iran's capability to develop a nuclear weapon within a year or more. U.S. assistance was sought not just to defend Israel from Iranian retaliation, but also to ensure that the attack was successful. After months of internal debate, Trump made the decision, the right one in my opinion, to seek negotiations with Iran rather than support this military action. There are serious questions whether Israel has the technology or the military capability to hit Iran other than nuclearly, and would have required U.S. support in order to do so. Now, assuming that all of my sources are accurate, and I believe they are, Tulsi Gabbard, Pete Hegseth, Susie Wiles, and J.D. Vance worked closely together in a bloc to push against immediate war with Iran, and then they have completely vindicated the trust put in them by the American people. Would John Bolton or Mad Dog Mattis or even former Vice President Mike Pence ever stop a war with Iran? I doubt it. It's clear that President Donald Trump has a worthy support staff in his new administration and that he is the peacemaker that we elected him to be. The fight continues over this illegal immigrant that Democrats want to return from El Salvador to the United States. There's a couple problems with this entire narrative. First of all, the gentleman in question, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, is not a U.S. citizen. He's a citizen of El Salvador. He is an MS-13 gang member deported to El Salvador that Democrats claim was deported by mistake. He is suspected of engaging in human trafficking by the Tennessee Highway Patrol officer who detained him back in December of 2022, leading the Tennessee Highway Patrol to contact the FBI for guidance. There are also serious and I think credible allegations that he is both a wife beater and a human trafficker. The officer responsible for the stop in Tennessee immediately discovered that Garcia was transporting 7 passengers and was operating a vehicle without a valid driver's license. He then began searching for information about Garcia. Within 2 hours, Biden's FBI requested the Tennessee Highway Patrol release Garcia and the passengers in his vehicle, and they complied with that request from the Biden administration. So it's amazing to me how Americans go to jail for driving without a license, let alone with a car full of illegal immigrants, but Garcia was set free to go on his way. There it is, folks, the hallmark of the Biden administration. Garcia has also been exposed, as I say, as a wife beater. The wife of this deported Salvadoran migrant, Albergo Garcia, accused him of violently beating her several times in a 2021 court filing under oath. In November of 2020, Albergo Garcia hit Jennifer Vasquez with his work boots. That was in August of 22. He hit her in the face again, causing her to get a black eye. And in May of 2021, after an argument at a gas station, the El Salvadorian illegal immigrant punched and scratched his wife, leaving her bleeding, according to the court filings that I examined. While Democrats are crying over this illegal immigrant that El Salvador has labeled a terrorist, and they have imprisoned as soon as he was returned to his home country, another illegal immigrant from El Salvador, Victor Martinez Hernandez, was convicted of murder on Monday. Martinez Hernandez murdered a woman named Rachel Morin, a mother of 5, on a hiking trail in Maryland in August of 2023. Patty Morin, the mother of the late Rachel Morin, slammed Democrat Senator Chris Van Hollen on Wednesday for focusing on the deportation of a criminal migrant instead of the brutal death of her daughter. To have a senator from Maryland who didn't even acknowledge or barely acknowledge my daughter and the brutal death that she endured, leaving her 5 children without a mother and now a grandbaby without a grandmother, so that he can use my taxpayer money to fly to El Salvador to bring back someone who's not an American citizen and has no right to be here. Someone who is in fact a illegal, a violent terrorist. It is outrageous. Why does this person have more rights than I do, Patty Morin said. That's my daughter or my grandchildren. I don't understand any of this. Meanwhile, border czar Tom Homan said on Tuesday that criminal charges are coming for sanctuary state and city leaders that facilitate the illegal entry of and harboring of illegal aliens. This is a message echoed by the new U.S. Attorney in California. President Trump has also signed an order authorizing the military to take control of public lands along the border, known as the Roosevelt Reservation, to secure our southern border. This is a 60-foot wide swath that stretches from California all the way to New Mexico, initially set up by President Teddy Roosevelt in 1905, designed to secure America's border. It's taken over 100 years, but President Donald Trump is finally doing that. Illegal border crossings down 93%. Remember when Joe Biden told us he needed a new law in order to seal our border? President Trump is demonstrating that there was no new law needed. What we needed was the will, the courage to enforce the law. That's exactly what Donald Trump is doing. More good news. Donald Trump is set to cut funding to National Public Radio, Harvard, some deep cuts into foreign aid, including cuts for the United Nations and for the NATO headquarters. The Trump administration took its first steps Monday towards ending federal funding for National Public Radio, also known as NPR, as well as public broadcasting services. You know it as PBS, informing key members of Congress that it's asking them to eliminate all such spending while also codifying foreign aid cuts identified by Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. In essence, NPR and the public broadcast system, these were not unbiased journalistic enterprises or news outlets. These were the propaganda fronts for the extreme left and the Democrat Party. Why should you and I subsidize this with our tax dollars? These requests of Congress are contained in rescission plans that pitches a clawback of $1.1 billion already appropriated for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and another $8.3 billion from USAID. Who would listen to either one of them when you could be listening to the Red Apple audio networks? And nobody's giving us billions of dollars. A memo drafted by the White House Budget Director Russ Vought, also requested by congressional Republican leaders, accuses the Corporation for Public Broadcast of a lengthy history of anti-conservative bias and cites the waste, fraud, and abuse at USAID. Now, formal transmission of the plan after the Easter recess will start a 45-day clock for the House and the Senate to adopt or reject this blueprint, which the White House believes will pass with the required simple majority in each chamber, unlike President Trump's 2018 rescission plan, which failed in the Senate by a mere 2 votes. The White House memo also notes that National Public Radio CEO Catherine Maher once called President Trump a fascist and a deranged racist, statements that Maher told Congress last night she regrets making. Aw, that's too bad. And she cites 2 recent PBS programs featuring transgendered characters. Last month on Truth Social, President Trump himself wrote, National Public Radio and the public broadcast system, 2 horrible and completely biased platforms, should be defunded by Congress immediately. Amen. I agree. Vought's list of waste he found cuts to USAID include $9.4 million for championing transformative changes in gender norms, $3 million for Iraqi Sesame Street programming, $1 million for voter ID in Haiti, where they have no election planned, and $3 million for circumcisions, vasectomies, and condoms in Zambia. I'm sure that's how you want your tax dollars spent. The Trump administration all announced that it is freezing $2.2 billion in grants and another $60 million in contracts to Harvard after the university said it would not comply with the Trump administration's demands to dismantle diversity programs and to limit student protests. I also saw that they gave $140 million to Brown University. These are allegedly private educational institutions. Why are they receiving our federal tax dollars? 2 weeks ago, the Department of Education and Health and Human Services, along with the GSA, the General Services Administration, launched a review of approximately $9 billion in federal funding provided to Harvard. Days later, the administration sent the university an initial list of areas of reform that the government views as necessary for Harvard University's continued financial relationship with the United States government. Those steps include elimination of these DEI programs, a ban on face covering during protests, and reforms to admissions and hiring systems that prioritize merit-based criteria over race or gender preference-based preferences. Pardon me. The letter also urges the university to fully cooperate with federal agencies, including the Department of Homeland Security, to pursue structural reforms and leadership changes to ensure that there is long-term compliance. Everybody knows that Harvard has lost its way, President Trump said on Truth Social. They hired from New York and Chicago at ridiculously high salaries 2 of the worst, most incompetent mayors in the history of our country to teach municipal management and government. These 2 radical left fools left behind 2 cities that will take years to recover from their incompetence and evil. Harvard has been hiring almost all woke, radical leftists, idiots, and bird brains who are only capable of teaching failure to students and so-called future leaders. Look just to the recent past at their plagiarizing president at Harvard, who greatly embarrassed that institution before the United States Congress. When it's gotten so bad that they couldn't take it anymore, they just moved this grossly inept and incompetent woman into another position, teaching rather than firing her on the spot as they should have. Since then, much has been found out about her, but she remains in place, still drawing a big salary. Many others, like these leftists, are teaching at Harvard, and because of that, Harvard can no longer be considered even a decent place of learning and should not be considered on any list of the world's great universities. If you're just tuning in, I'm Roger Stone, and this is the Stone Zone, and we'll be right back with the Stone Cold Truth.
The Stone Zone
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This episode is brought to you by Loom by Atlassian. Are you feeling stuck at work? Get your team unstuck with Loom video messaging and move work forward. Use Loom to simultaneously record both your screen and yourself to share a quick update, provide feedback, train a colleague, and everything in between. Plus, add Loom AI to your meetings for instant written notes and recordings. Try Loom today at Loom.com. That's LOOM.com.
Parents of tweens, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
This episode is brought to you by GMC. When you have 4 new tires, every drive feels fresh. Right now, buy 3 select tires and get 1 for just $1 during the GMC Certified Service Fresh Start Tire Event. Visit gmc.com/service offers or see dealer for full details. At participating U.S. GM dealers only. Highest or equal value tire will be $1. Offer ends 5/31/2025. Not available with other offers.
Anyone can follow. It takes something special to be an original, which is why the 2025 Lincoln Navigator SUV arrives with new ways of surrounding you in luxury, including the ultra-wide 48-inch panoramic display and the multi-sensory Lincoln Rejuvenate experience. A true original never stops evolving. So meet the 2025 Navigator, the original that's all new and better than ever. Learn more at Lincoln.com. Lincoln and Navigator are trademarks of Ford or its affiliates.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
There's a massive scandal here in the Sunshine State. Governor Ron DeSantis and his wife, Casey DeSantis, who's been quite open about the fact that she is thinking about running for governor since her husband, Ron DeSantis, is term limited by the state constitution. And their newly appointed attorney general have been accused of illegally taking over $10 million from Medicaid, money that was meant to pay for health care for the poor, the elderly, and the disabled, and basically transferring it to a political slush fund, where from there they transferred it into 2 campaigns against a proposition on the Florida ballot that would have legalized marijuana. Put aside where you stand on the question, this is an illegal use of our Medicaid dollars. I think it is a violation of the law for which somebody should be prosecuted. Coming up next, the chairwoman of the Democrat Party of Florida, Nikki Fried, joins me to break this all down in the Stone Zone. This is, to us, a demonstration of the bipartisan nature of the Stone Zone. We're going to break this entire scandal down for you, and figure out what comes next in this incredible, massive theft from the American people. Whatever you do, don't touch that dial, because we'll be right back.
The Stone Zone
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You need a vacation, so why not come play in LA?
Fill your days with fun and let Los Angeles dazzle you with iconic landmarks, epic scenery, and stunning coastlines. And when the sun goes down, it's the perfect place to enjoy world-class dining and nightlife. Let play lead the way and soak up all this city has to offer. Start planning your LA getaway now at visitcalifornia.com.
Clorox Sentiva smells like lavender. Cleans like Clorox. And feels like...
All right, that could go on for a while. Experience the long-lasting freshness of Clorox Sentiva. Available in Clorox Sentiva Lavender Scented Bleach. Use as directed.
Morning decisions. A creamy mocha frappuccino drink? A sweet vanilla? Maybe a smooth caramel? Or that white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Start your day with bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drinks. Pick up a bottle near you wherever you buy your groceries.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. 3 couples, 4 vacations, a lot to unpack. Watch The 4 Seasons, a new series starring comedy favorites Tina Fey, Steve Carell, Will Forte, Coleman Domingo, and more in a hilarious and heartfelt love letter to long-term relationships. Based on the original Alan Alda film. Watch The 4 Seasons, streaming now only on Netflix.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. You are entering yet again the Stone Zone. Joining me now, Nikki Fried. She is the chairwoman of the Florida Democrat Party, a former Florida Agriculture Commissioner, the only Democrat elected statewide in the Sunshine State from 2018 to 2022. She's an attorney, a lifelong advocate for medical cannabis reform, consumer rights, and environmental protection. People find this hard to believe. She's also a longtime friend of mine, despite our energetic political disagreement. And she's here to talk about what I think could be the greatest single corruption scandal in Florida history. That is the scandal surrounding Governor Ron DeSantis, First Lady Casey DeSantis, and our new temporary Attorney General, Mr. James Uthmeier. Nikki, welcome into the Stone Zone.
Thanks, Roger, for having me today. Yeah, I think people are going to be surprised by our conversation.
Well, we agree on some things, and I think Governor DeSantis turns out to be one of them. So let's try to recap this as best we can for our listeners. It appears to me that Governor DeSantis and his wife, who aspires evidently to be governor, diverted $10 million that should have been spent by Medicaid for health care for the elderly, the poor, and the disabled. And they moved it first to a slush fund, a political slush fund, and from there into 2 campaigns to oppose a question on the ballot, a constitutional amendment having to do with the legal status of cannabis. Do I have that about right?
Yeah, that's about right. You know, basically what happened, from my understanding, and again, as we're talking, Roger, this is all kind of coming out and subpoenas and questions to the governor's staff, that there was, a lawsuit that had happened with one of the Medicaid providers. And there was a settlement, a pre-lawsuit settlement that had happened where there was $67 million that was supposed to come back to the Medicaid program, to your point, to go to, children and families that are, are really in need and help. And they diverted $10 million of that to Casey's, I think they're calling it the Hope Foundation, with the lofty goal of taking people off of welfare. But that's not what happened. They took that money, and that was their slush fund, and they started to play around with it and to eventually get into some dark money PCs that James was overseeing on the direction of the governor. And then that money was used to go after legalization of cannabis.
It's really quite extraordinary, I guess, particularly because of the governor's reaction when members of his own party in the state legislature, yesterday we had State Representative Andrade on, asking perfectly reasonable questions. He seems to just go completely nuts, like the people of Florida have no right whatsoever to question him.
Yeah, like how dare us get to the bottom of the answers of why this nonprofit organization that was formed for Casey has never had a public meeting, that the attorneys that represent this Hope Foundation are the same attorneys that are representing these PCs. Like, why did all this happen? Who is in charge of cutting these deals? Those are pretty rational, transparent questions that, I would think the governor should be okay if he has nothing to hide, being able to answer.
As far as I can see, based on my own research, the Hope Florida Foundation, this vehicle headed by Casey DeSantis, hasn't fired the required audits, their tax returns, or any of the legally required ethics disclosures under Florida law. It's almost as if Ron and Casey DeSantis think the law does not apply to them.
Yeah, that's right. And even on a nonprofit, they didn't register with the Department of Agriculture, which we have to do too if you're a nonprofit organization in Florida. They didn't do any of their IRS tax forms, and this is something else that Representative Andrade was asking questions on. Where are your tax forms? Where is your information? Every question that was being asked of the director, who again resigned after this testimony in the Florida House this week, kept saying, well, advice of counsel, the same attorney that was representing, again, these PCs. But yeah, it looked like it was a slush fund. And unfortunately, he's been getting away with this kind of stuff for 6 years. I've been, bringing to light all of this corruption that Ron and Casey and his executive office has been doing for 6 years. And it's good to see that the Republican legislature, specifically in the Florida House, is finally understanding that we all need to be, this is not partisan, uncovering corruption and making sure that we're holding our elected officials to some type of standards and no one's above the law.
Yeah, one of the things that I dislike the most about this administration is the way they have gutted the state's sunshine laws. In Florida, it used to be capable of any Florida taxpayer could learn essentially anything about any public meeting or any public process or any expenditure of your tax dollars. Now, unfortunately, it's almost completely opaque. So, for example, you not only can't find out where the governor's going to take the state airplane, they argue that's a security issue, perhaps, but you can't even find out where the state airplane has been. I don't see a security issue there. What I see is potentially in the past the use of the state plane for political purposes. And then Mr. Uthmeier was actually raising money from the executive office of the governor, that's against the law, and using the governor's mansion for political fundraisers for the governor's presidential campaign. That's also against the law. These people really kind of have, and I'm a Republican, but these people have no shame.
No shame. And I'll go even further than that, Roger. It's not even just the manifest of where the plane has gone and where it's going, but who's on it. Those are even more telling of where, what conversations are happening not in the sunshine. I know that over the course of the last 6 years, the taxpayers have spent so much money defending the governor when it comes to not fulfilling public records requests. Everything has been taken out of the sunshine, and going even to those dollars that have been, raised. For anybody who doesn't remember, during this time period when he was between legislative session as well as before signing of the budget and signing of any of those bills, James and other key leadership inside the governor's office were making phone calls to state representatives and lobbyists, holding over their heads the budget and these bills to get endorsements for his presidential run, get money into the coffers for that presidential run. I, in fact, as chair of the party, filed ethics complaints that year to kind of bring to light some of this. And, of course, the Ethics Commission, which half of it is appointed by DeSantis, just brushed it off because no one wanted to publicly come out and verify that, in fact, had happened. And we filed 3 criminal complaints last year, too. We have 3 criminal complaints pending in 3 of our counties when James took 6 of the agencies that they oversee and also funneled money to take down legalization of cannabis.
Yeah, the other thing they got away with that truly shocked me was to raise, I think it was $85 million more than they needed for his reelection as governor, which was in a state PAC, and then transfer that money to a federal PAC. Now, there used to be a line on the Secretary of State's website that said that was illegal, but that wording suddenly disappeared like overnight. It was gone. The Trump campaign, as I recall, filed a complaint with the Federal Election Commission about this illegal action. It was, by the way, a number of individuals who donated to Governor DeSantis against Donald Trump but didn't want to own up to it. They basically laundered their contribution in this way so they could see the president and say to him with a straight face, I didn't give money to Ron DeSantis for president. No, they gave it to Ron DeSantis for governor, and he just transferred the money over. By the way, we would never have gotten away with that. Neither you nor I. Exactly. But right. he got away with it. I guess because the FEC ties 3-3 on any question put before it, and therefore you could never get any satisfaction there. I do think it was really something when the governor essentially threw his wife over the side and said, in this rambling diatribe in which he attacked everybody, the media, the Democrats, the Republicans, as if no one has the right to question him. But he then basically said, look, it was her thing. I had no ownership of it. I didn't devise it. I didn't set the vision. I didn't execute it. As if it's like, hey, it's not me. Ask my wife. I'm going to go play golf.
Yeah, I mean, he does that on everything. That whatever happens, so the buck stops here. In politics and in business. That at the end of the day, as a leader, regardless of who does what underneath, you take ownership. They're your people, and this is his wife. It's the fact that he has never owned up to any of these things and always pushes on to somebody else and blames somebody else for it. Takes no responsibility for his actions. And it's good that everybody else is starting to see it unfolding in front of our eyes about the corruption, the nepotism that has happened under DeSantis. And it's good to see finally that the public is seeing this firsthand.
I mean, I think people need to drop back and see the broader question. When I criticize the governor in colorful language on social media,
me too.
his flying monkeys, this little band of flying monkeys that he has online, immediately attack you. But the facts are the facts. Since Ron DeSantis took office, homeowner insurance premiums have tripled, averaging $6,000 a year in Florida. They're the highest in the nation. His reforms handed insurers $2 billion in taxpayer-funded bailouts while letting them dodge lawsuits, which leaves the average Floridian with soaring rates and no recourse when the company denies your hurricane claim. He also greenlit utility rate hikes with Florida Power and Light after they gave him $9.5 million directly and through their subsidiaries for his presidential campaign, jacking up our utility bills in Florida by 20% since 2020. It's the highest single increase in Florida history. Of course, his Public Service Commission, stacked with DeSantis loyalists, DeSantoids we call them, rubber-stamped these increases, hitting working families very hard while he ignores our pain. Meanwhile, try buying or renting a house in Florida. Median home prices jumped 65% under Ron DeSantis from an average of $254,000 in 2018 to $420,000 in 2024. On the whole issue of housing, his inaction when it comes to affordability and his very cozy ties with developers prioritize profits over people. They're pricing retirees and young people like my own daughter, who's trying to find someplace to live right now, completely out of the housing market. So I always find that online, the people who tell me he's the best governor in the country, they never live in Florida. They live someplace else.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm hearing it, and I'm going to even go one step further, that the property insurance in some areas in our state has actually increased 405%. People are that, especially people that have come down here and retired and even bought out their house or have a small mortgage, they can't afford the property insurance, and it's just going to get worse because they, have had blank checks over to insurance companies. And I always ask this question: it's like, okay, so you passed all these reforms allegedly in the last couple of years to reduce costs. Roger, you've been involved in this a lot longer than I have. I have never seen a time when an insurance company or a corporation says, you know what, I made too much money this year, I'm going to cut my rates for next year. That just doesn't happen. And so there was no carrot and stick. There was no, hey, when you finally get back to parity, if in fact there were some losses along the way, then at that point we'll start seeing reductions in costs and you have to do this. That didn't happen. And so now the insurance companies continue to get away with it. There's no recourse, as you just said. Our condo market in South Florida is about to completely crumble and put us into a crisis. And we've got a lot of problems. And don't forget the other thing that happened, as somebody who spends a lot of time in Key West, the people of Key West voted to not have those cruise ships. The big cruise ships that are destroying the environment down there and are costing a lot of extra dollars for the local government. And because he got $1 million campaign contribution from the guys who are the lease of that port, they had a piece of legislation the last couple of years that overrode that local bill. Just a corruption on every single corner to get into bed with the developers and the big ticket item, donors, and all at the expense of the people that live here in our state.
Yeah, for those who keep telling me what a great conservative Ron is, the truth is he raised taxes in the state of Florida by $1.5 billion since 2019, including higher vehicle registrations, online sales tax, really hitting small businesses and families. He says there are no new taxes in his records, but people who live here really feel the pinch, while he takes credit for tax cuts. And then, of course, there's his so-called signature issue. He brags about Florida's freedom during the COVID pandemic, but he quietly signed laws shielding these big pharmaceutical outfits from vaccine lawsuits. So his tough talk hit a sellout once more to corporate interests, betraying the people who trusted him to fight the system. If you're just tuning in, this is the Stone Zone. I'm talking to Nikki Fried. She's the chairwoman of the Florida Democrat Party, and we'll be right back with more. So whatever you do, don't touch that dial.
The Stone Zone
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You guys, I just found the most incredible Mother's Day gift. It's called Goldbelly. Goldbelly is this amazing site where you can get the most iconic foods from restaurants all across the U.S., shipped anywhere in the country for free in time for Mother's Day. We're talking cakes from Ina Garten and Martha Stewart, Magnolia Bakery's famous banana pudding, and New York bagel brunches. Make Mother's Day perfect with Goldbelly.com and get 20% off your first order with promo code MOM. That's Goldbelly.com, promo code MOM.
Halliday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Halliday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Halliday. Halliday, bring it on.
My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
This episode is brought to you by Principles. Are there limits to the U.S. government's debt growth? What will happen if the debts are not curtailed? What should policymakers or investors do? Those are urgent questions that legendary investor and New York Times bestselling author Ray Dalio addresses in his new book, How Countries Go Broke, The Big Cycle. The book comes out in June and is available for pre-order today, wherever books are sold.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. We're in the Stone Zone. We're talking to Nikki Fried. She is the chairwoman of the Florida Democrat Party. She is the last, I think, statewide elected Democrat serving as Florida Commissioner of Agriculture, the only Democrat elected statewide from 2018 to 2022. She is a tough political operator who fights hard for her party and her point of view. She's also an attorney and a longtime advocate for medicinal cannabis reform. We're very happy to have her on today's show. Let's talk some politics, Nikki. Congressman Byron Donalds of the Naples area has announced his candidacy for governor. He's already been warmly endorsed by the leader of our party, President Donald Trump. I've said for roughly 2.5 years that Casey DeSantis would run for governor. people have laughed at me. Those are the same people who laughed at me when I said that Ron DeSantis would challenge the man who made him governor. Remember, he was an indistinguished congressman with a bad suit and an even worse haircut, running at about 8% in the polls when he was lifted out of obscurity with the endorsement of Donald Trump, soared to an easy victory in the Republican primary over the Agriculture Commissioner, Adam Putnam. But then in the last 3 weeks of that campaign, President Trump had to change his schedule 3 times to return to Florida to literally drag Ron DeSantis over the finish line by a mere 25,000 votes out of 8 million plus cast. So my question for you, just looking ahead, what does the Democrat field look like in the next gubernatorial campaign?
You know, we certainly are looking through some of the candidates that have kind of popped up. You know, I'm hearing the rumblings that we've got David Jolly, who used to be a member of the Republican Party in Congress and CD13, who has been an independent for the last 5 to 10 years. I'm not sure on the exact timing. Hearing rumblings that he is going to be declaring sometime in the near future. There's other people that are kind of in the mix, but, you know, we are spending a lot of time here as, you know, as chair of the party, making sure that we are getting back to the basics and talking to donors and talking to our voters and making sure that our message right. You know, I think that one of the things, and I know we've got obviously different party affiliations here, but I think that what we have seen is when you have just complete domination from one party, and it could be Democrat or Republican, government doesn't work. There's no checks and balances. So that's always been my motto, is to make sure that we get those checks and balances and get, you know, some good leaders on both sides to be able to work together to get some good legislation that affects and impacts everybody.
Is asking legitimate questions of a Republican governor. And I applaud the Speaker, Danny Perez, as well as Representative Andrade, for asking the tough questions. To the extent that we have checks and balances, there it is. Maybe it's because of the governor's epic abuse of the legislature when he was riding high. I also am of the opinion, some of my Republican friends may not like this, but I still think this is a purple state. Yes, I recognize that DeSantis won big, but I think the hurricane had a lot to do with that. Would he have won? I believe he would have won, but I don't think he would have won by the kind of margin that he won. He dominated all free media for the last 3 weeks of that campaign. Of course, President Trump won in an epic comeback bid, but anyone who thinks that Florida is no longer a competitive state, I happen to think they are incorrect. I think it's a question of the candidates, and who knows what the atmosphere will be, 2 years from now. I personally am for Byron Donalds. I like him a lot. I have a huge amount of confidence in him. I think he'll be a great governor. I want to see a spirited contest. I want to see the Democrats nominate someone a little more, to the center. But I won't be voting the Democrat primary, so it's not up. It won't be not up to me. Anyway, this has been a great exchange. I want to thank my guest, Nikki Fried. She is the chairwoman of the Florida Democrat Party. She's an accomplished attorney, the last statewide elected Democrat in the Florida, and a real fighter for everything she believes in. Thank you so much for joining us today in the Stone Zone, and God bless you and Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?